You're almost gone. Your breathing has slowed, your thoughts have started to come apart into that loose, drifting nonsense that means sleep is finally close. And then your leg kicks, or you miss a step that was never there. Your whole body lurches to catch a fall that isn't happening, and you're suddenly, stupidly awake, heart going, eyes open on the dark ceiling. Nothing was wrong. Nothing pushed you. The room is exactly as still as it was a second ago. So what precisely just threw you back from the edge? It has a name. The hypnic jerk. Sometimes the sleep start. Sometimes the hypnagogic jerk. And the honest answer to what it is turns out to be far stranger than your brain thought you were falling. Because the falling was never the cause. The falling was a story your half-asleep brain wrote afterward, to explain a twitch it didn't order and couldn't account for. Here's the question this episode is really about. Not why you feel like you're falling, but why your own body makes a movement that no part of you asked for, in the exact half-second when you stop being awake. Let's start with the most reassuring thing, because it's true. If this happens to you, you are almost boringly normal. Surveys of ordinary sleepers put the number somewhere around 60 to 70% of people who report experiencing hypnic jerks, at least sometimes. Plenty of researchers suspect the real figure is higher, and that the rest simply sleep through their own twitches without ever surfacing enough to notice. They cluster in one specific place, the doorway, not in deep sleep, not in dreams, right at sleep onset, in the first minutes as you cross from awake into the lightest stage of sleep. And they are, as far as anyone can tell, completely harmless. Not a seizure, not a warning, not a sign of anything wrong with your heart or your brain. A jerk at the threshold of sleep is one of the most common things a human nervous system does, and one of the least understood. So sit with that for a second. This is a thing that happens to most of the people you know, most nights at the same moment. And we still can't fully explain it. That gap is where this gets interesting. To understand the twitch, you have to understand that falling asleep is not an event. It feels like one, like a switch, like a curtain, but it isn't. It's a handoff. While you're awake, a cluster of structures deep in your brainstem, the reticular formation, the old machinery near the top of your spinal cord, keeps a low current running to your muscles. This is the system that holds your posture, keeps your jaw from dropping, keeps a baseline of readiness in your limbs. It is, in a real sense, the thing that keeps your body switched on. Falling asleep means turning that hum down. Sleep-promoting circuits, networks running out of the hypothalamus and the brainstem that release the brakes on sleep, start to win the tug-of-war, and one of their jobs is to lower the tone in your muscles, to let your body go slack, so it doesn't act out whatever's coming. Your arousal system fades out, your quieting system fades in. And here is the crucial part. Those two systems do not switch cleanly, like one light going off as another comes on. They overlap. For a stretch of seconds, the circuits keeping you awake and the circuits pulling you under are both partly active, both partly disengaged, neither fully in charge. You are, for that moment, being run by a committee that hasn't finished voting. The premise of tonight is that the hypnic jerk lives exactly in that overlap. It's what it looks like when the motor system and the shutting down brainstem briefly disagree about whether you're still awake. And the twitch is the disagreement made physical. Now, mechanism one step deeper. In that unsettled window, before the muscle tone has fully dropped, a burst of excitation can escape. Think of it as a stray command, a wave of motor activity that fires down through the nervous system and reaches the muscle before the stand-down order has fully landed. The motor pathway is still live enough to carry it. The inhibition is not yet strong enough to swallow it. And so, the muscle contracts, genuinely contracts. This is the detail people miss. The hypnic jerk is not a sensation, not a dream, not a feeling of movement. It is movement. If you wired someone up in a sleep lab and watched their leg at that instant, you would see the real electrical signature of a muscle firing, and the limb would really move. Your body executed a motion that no conscious part of you authorized, in the one moment your authorization was offline. So that's the kick. But most people don't remember the kick. They remember the fall, the misstep, the lurch off a curb, the stumble on the stairs, the sickening drop. Where does that come from, if the only real event was a muscle twitch? This is where the hypnic jerk stops being a story about muscles and becomes a story about how your brain builds reality, because it turns out you don't perceive the world. You perceive your brain's best guess about the world, constantly, all day, and you never notice because the guess is usually right. Here's what happens. Your brain is a prediction machine. Every second it's running a model of your body and its surroundings, and it uses that model to interpret the flood of raw signal coming in from your senses. When a signal arrives, your brain doesn't just receive it, it explains it instantly by asking, given everything I know, what would have caused this? Now, put that machine into the half-off state of sleep onset. Your senses are dimming, your grip on where your body is in space has gone loose, and into that fog arrives a sudden, sharp, unmistakable signal of movement, a real jolt from a real muscle, with no setup, no context, no reason. Your brain gets the sensation of a lurch with nothing to pin it on. So it does what it always does. It writes the fastest story that fits. A sudden downward movement, out of nowhere, with your body relaxed and unsupported. The most economical explanation your brain can reach for is, you're falling. And it hands you that explanation as an experience, vivid, physical, already complete. You don't reason your way to I must be falling. You simply feel yourself fall. Which means the falling sensation isn't the cause of the jerk. It's the reverse. The jerk comes first. The falling is your brain's after-the-fact caption, generated in a fraction of a second to make sense of a movement it couldn't source. You are watching your own mind do, in miniature and at the edge of sleep, the thing it does every waking moment, turning raw signal into a confident story and showing you only the story. Now, the part where we have to be honest, because there's a version of this story that gets told constantly, and it's a guess wearing the costume of a fact. You've probably heard it. The idea that the hypnic jerk is an ancient reflex left over from when our primate ancestors slept in trees, that as your muscles relaxed and you began to slump, some old survival circuit read the loss of tension as you're falling out of the branch and fired your limbs to catch you. It's a lovely story. It's tidy. It flatters us with a deep evolutionary origin. Nobody has demonstrated that. There's no fossil of a reflex. No experiment that has traced the hypnic jerk back to an arboreal catch reflex. No way at present to confirm that's where it comes from. It's a plausible-sounding hypothesis that has been repeated so many times it has hardened into something people state as settled. It isn't. It's one guess among several about why the twitch takes the shape it does, and why the accompanying story so reliably becomes falling, specifically, rather than anything else. Some researchers think the falling narrative is just the brain's default reading of sudden, uncontrolled downward-feeling motion. No evolution required. The same reason a lurch in an elevator feels like a drop. Others suspect the twitch and the sensation are looser cousins than the neat story implies. The truthful position, the one the actual science supports, is smaller and stranger than the tree. We know the jerk is a real motor event at the threshold of sleep. We have a good picture of the unstable handoff that lets it happen, and we do not fully know why. The gap is genuine. Anyone who tells you the reason with total confidence is selling you the caption, not the twitch. And that honesty, I'd argue, makes it better. A leftover branch reflex is a museum piece, something that happened to your ancestors. An unexplained hiccup in the most fundamental transition your nervous system makes every single night that we still can't fully account for. That's happening to you tonight, and nobody in the world can tell you exactly why. Here's something you can actually notice, though, the conditions that make it worse. Because while the deep why is uncertain, the aggravators are pretty consistent, and you can feel them for yourself. Caffeine is the obvious one. Stimulants keep your arousal system firing when it's trying to power down, which means the handoff at sleep onset happens against more resistance. The awake circuits don't fade quietly, they get dragged offline while still partly lit. A more abrupt, more contested handoff seems to make a stray motor burst more likely to slip through. Late coffee doesn't just delay sleep, it roughens the seam where sleep begins. Stress and anxiety do a similar thing, from a different direction. A wound-up nervous system is running hot as you try to sleep. Your arousal machinery won't settle, so it's still partly active at the exact moment your quieting system is trying to take over. Two systems both insisting they're in charge. More disagreement at the threshold, more twitches. In exhaustion, this is the cruel one. When you're badly sleep-deprived, your brain doesn't ease into sleep, it lunges. The descent is faster and steeper. The systems slam into transition instead of gliding, and that abruptness appears to give the jerk more room to happen. The more desperate you are to fall asleep, the harder the fall, and sometimes the sharper the catch. Screens and late alerting stimulation ride along with all of these. Anything that keeps your arousal system engaged right up until the moment you ask it to release. Notice, I'm not handing you a bedtime lecture. I'm telling you what the seam is made of, so that the next time you get kicked awake after a late espresso and a stressful day of not enough sleep, you'll recognize what you're feeling. Your own handoff running rough, live, in real time. So let's go back to the ceiling. You're lying there, heart still tapping from a fall that never happened, faintly embarrassed by a body that flinched at nothing. Except it wasn't nothing. What you just felt was the single most mysterious thing you do every day, made briefly visible. Every night you cross from being a conscious, continuous, self-directing person into a slack and undirected body. You switch yourself off, and you do it so smoothly that you never catch the moment it happens. You can't. The you that would notice is the thing being turned down. The hypnic jerk is the rare night the gears don't quite mesh. The handoff slips. The awake circuits and the sleeping circuits overlap badly for a second. A stray command gets loose, your leg moves, and your dimming brain scrambles to explain a motion it didn't order. And for one strange instant, you are actually there to feel it. You get to witness the machinery of your own shutdown, mid-slip, from the inside. Most of what your body does when you stop watching, you will never feel. This one, you do. Not a glitch to be fixed, a gap in the curtain, the one reliable moment you're allowed to feel yourself stop being awake and live to remember it.